which obviously they were using that same money they were being given to fund that program. It's the reason why we had to take that out as well. I think it's something that you can't understate enough. They were working on it. It was their big goal. And if they had been left alone, they would have achieved it.
If you are in the military or a vet, your opinion matters more than most. And I want to hear what you have to say. So drop it in the comments below. I hope you guys enjoyed that interview, and more will be coming as I have more people that are willing to speak out on this and share their thoughts so you, the American people, can hear directly from them what they think. So I'm joined today by someone with firsthand military experience who understands the Middle East far better than most commentators on television, including myself. Well, not necessarily on television, but on this podcast. So joining me now is Terri Kohensky, who served our country as a U.S. Navy nurse from August 13th, 1989 through August 31st, 1995. During her time in service, Terri was stationed in Bahrain from December 1992 through June 1994, right in the heart of the Middle East, a region that continues to play a critical role in global security and American foreign policy. Living and working there gave her a first-hand look at the culture, the tensions in the region, and the complex relationships between the United States and our allies. So today, we're going to talk about the situation with Iran, the broader Middle East, and what Americans should understand about President Trump's approach to defending American interests while standing with our allies. Terri, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Yes, this is an honor to have you on. So first, I would love for you to dive a little into your experience living and being in Bahrain, serving there, and also how did that shape your understanding of the Middle East?
I was I was stationed in Bahrain, which had been a British protectorate up until 1978. There were still a lot of British holdings there and British people there. There's an oil company that between Britain and Bahrain. So there was a lot of westernization. Bahrain doesn't have the oil supplies that other OPEC and all the other countries have. So the emir at the time had decided that for Bahrain to really have a voice in the region was to become the financial capital. So Bahrain was much more westernized with lots of banks and foreigners than the surrounding countries, but you still get a firsthand look at what life is like, because a lot of people from Saudi Arabia, of the royal family and the ranking people, would come over to Bahrain on the weekends. And so you could see firsthand, actually, in that little enclave, the difference between living in a Western country, even though it was Arab, and living in Saudi Arabia. I was driving. I didn't have to wear a burqa. The only time I wore a burqa or a hijab or whatever you wanted to call it was when the Shiites, and Bahrain is the only country other than Iran who allowed a Shiite enclave when they would celebrate on Shara, and that would be very different, very, very dangerous to be out and recognized as a white American. And I would wear the burqa then, but by the same token, I couldn't wear my uniform out in town. You know, I had to be in street clothes if I was out in town so that they, wouldn't identify me as U.S. military. Even though we had a U.S. military base there, you just couldn't be out in town in uniform. It was, I saw the restrictions around it as we related to the other countries who came in. And you would see on TV in Saudi Arabia, when they would stone women for an affair. Of course, that's fine for the men. They get away with it. It's the women who are stoned, the women who are beheaded, and they televise those. They still televise those. Once a week, they televise all of their executions. I saw firsthand just how brutal it can be with beggars on the streets in the souk missing an arm, because if you're caught stealing, they cut off your right hand. And if you get caught stealing again, they cut off your other hand. And if you manage to find a way to steal again, they kill you. It's really tragic. But it was also, the difference was noticed between us in Iran. But I'm old enough to remember the fall of the Shah. I can remember when Iran was a democracy. I can remember when Iran was a very profitable place to live, just like Venezuela was 30 years ago, the way Cuba was before Castro. But, you know, once the Shah came in, you know, they took our people captive, attacked our enemy, our embassy, which is an act of war. And they attacked our embassy, took our ambassadors and diplomats hostage, held them for 444 days under Jimmy Carter. And then Ronald Reagan told them, you know, if you don't turn our hostages loose, I'm going to come and get them. And the day of his inauguration, 400 our hostages were released because they knew not to mess with him. They knew he was going to follow through on it, where presidents before that hadn't. Or our previous president at that time, and our presidents ever since then haven't. They haven't taken anything with Iran other than Obama gave them a lot of money and Hillary gave them purified uranium. So I have seen, by my age, I will be 70 this year. And I have seen with my age, you know, from when I was in my 20s and the Shah was deposed until now, the Iran-Iraq war, what they did during the Iran-Iraq war, what they did to shipping, which is what they're doing now in the Iran-Iraq war. The difference is they got their mines laid in 89 and tried to almost took out one of our nuclear frigates by mining international waters, whereas now they were trying to mine the Straits of Hormuz, and our Navy and Air Force and Marine Corps pilots took care of the boats. They just, you know, you're not going to mine international waters and get away with it. So as I watch what's happening now to what I know of Iran from the past, of, you know, they've killed 40,000 people with this revolution of their protesters. And the people are still in the streets. The women are still throwing away their burqas. You know, they talk about, you know, they're Sunni, so, or not, they're not Sunni, they're Shiite. And they're so devoted to Muhammad and his teachings. Well, Muhammad married Iesha when she was 6 years old. And he took her to bed at 9 years old. So, you know, at the onset of menarche, with the parents' permission, you can marry off a 10 or 11, 12-year-old girl to a 45-year-old man. And that is normal. And if you resist or you try to run away, you're either severely beaten. There's women who've had acid thrown in their faces because they've tried to get away, or they're killed. And it's usually the family, their own families, that kill them as an honor killing. If a girl is raped, it's not the man's fault. It's her fault for having been in a position to be alone with him. Even if it's in her own home and it's an uncle, she is killed as an honor killing for adultery and promiscuity against the family. It doesn't matter whether it was consensual or not. Those are the facts of life that these women have been living under. And it's really just blows my mind of all these women on the left who are just so enraged that we're in Iran, where the people are in the streets begging us to bring troops in to finish this off. The girls are shedding their burqas under penalty of death to dance in the streets and celebrate the revolution. And a lot of them are dying for it. And the other thing that's not known to many people is that if you are a woman who's about to be executed, you can't be executed as a virgin. Because if you are, you'll go to heaven. If you're executed, they don't want you to go to heaven. So you can imagine what happens to these women before they're executed. It's a whole different, awful regime. Not even a government. It's just been a horrific regime, killing people that resist at all. They're Christian. I have seen it through Christian blogs and prophetic voices and evangelists reporting about the number of people in Iran over the last 10 or 20 years who have been converting to Christianity, but they've had to do it on the sly. They've had to be totally under the under the radar. They have to openly look like they are, practicing Islam while they're trying to maintain their faith and their loyalty to Christ. Now these people are in the streets. They're celebrating. They're having praise and worship in the streets, praising Jesus. So it's, as far as the people go and why we're there, we need to go, we need to help them. But the other thing is that they have been taught death to America from the cradle. They are taught that anybody who isn't a Muslim is an infidel, and they either convert or die. And that's the way Islam has been advanced over the entire world from the region, is by the sword. You go in, you learn the Arabic language, and you practice Islam, or you die. That's your choice. But they have funded Hezbollah against Israel and the U.S. They have given money in through, I believe it's been proven that they funded money into bin Laden's organization in order to get, the Twin Towers down. They have funded at least one assassination attempt on President Trump this election cycle. They have funded Hamas for decades. They funded the terrorists hiding out in Somalia, and it's that anything in Nigeria, anywhere they're killing Christians, they're killing Jews, they're killing Buddhists, they're killing anybody that doesn't follow Islam.
Now,
And
you mentioned something to me that I thought was interesting when it came to what was happening in Minnesota. Can you share with me your thoughts on that?
yeah, I think, all of that money that they have defrauded the U.S. government from, millions and millions, probably closer to a couple billions of dollars, have been funneled back to Somalia. And people were taking suitcases through TSA full of money headed for Somalia. Why they weren't stopped, I don't know. But they tracked it, but nobody stopped it. That's what they're trying to stop now, because they can, they get all this money from the U.S. So we can say, okay, we're going to cut off aid to Somalia as a government, but then you got all these back roads that are funding money into absolute terrorism. And I really believe that Iran has a lot to do with what's going on in Minnesota. Dearborn, the tragic thing that happened at the Jewish preschool and synagogue yesterday, they've identified the guy as Lebanese, immigrated to the U.S., and was a naturalized citizen. But one of the other, the guy who shot the colonel at Brown, he was an ISIS terrorist in our country.
Yeah.
He was convicted ISIS terrorist who was on the streets because Biden had released him, who then committed the atrocities at Brown.
Yeah.
Yeah, at Brown University. And I think, I heard yesterday that everybody was on high alert because at the start of the war of, Fury, there was a message that went out to the U.S. that they felt probably went to sleeper units to activate them. And I think the guy that attacked the synagogue lost family members in Lebanon when we responded to we and Israel, especially Israel responded to Lebanon, to the attacks from Lebanon. They responded to Hezbollah. And the guy lost a niece, a nephew, and I think a couple brothers. And so his retaliation was against the Jews because they had killed part of his family. Never mind that Lebanon started it this time. Israel was attacking Iran. They were leaving Lebanon alone. They were leaving Hezbollah alone. And Hezbollah responded because of the attack on Iran. And Israel then responded again. But, Iran, prior to that, ever since December 7th, with what happened with Hamas and Gaza, Iran has been flying drones in over the U.S. moved in, and some of our other allies moved in along the coast to control the fighting, and Israel from having to fight on two fronts because Hezbollah started attacking. And Iran's response was to send drones at the U.S. Navy and attacking our U.S. Navy ships. So fortunately, we didn't have a lot of casualties. We were able to shoot most of them down, but they had to get in the mix of it. And I'm sure they knew what was coming because they were probably giving a lot of the money to Hamas. Of course, we give a ton of money to Hamas too, but it doesn't go to the people. It goes to the leaders who are hiding out in Qatar, and it goes to the people who are running what's actually happening in Gaza. The people don't get medical care. They don't get food. They don't get, the utilities. They don't get the stuff that they need.
So I played a clip at when we were off camera for you about Senator John Kennedy telling the Senate what was taking place as a result of the intelligence that we received for Iran, that basically they were building up their ballistic missiles to be able to kind of hold the Middle East, as hostages, so that way the United States wouldn't be able to come in and interrupt their nuclear warhead. Based on what you're seeing now, do you think the current operation reduces that threat, or does it risk escalating the conflict further?
One of the things that I've seen listening to Secretary Hegseth every day, and what J.D. Vance has had to say, and what President Trump has had to say, is, Israel has intelligence sources buried deep in Iran, and so their targeting is on specific targets. And one of their focuses is the ballistic missile sites and the ballistic missile manufacturing, because Iran's close enough. They don't need a transcontinental ballistic missile to hit Iran or to hit Israel. They're close enough that they have other sources that can hit Israel. The intercontinental ballistic missiles are going to be geared for us. We are their biggest threat as far as the West goes, because Soviets are on their side, China's on their side, NATO and Europe, and particularly us, we are the biggest risks to them to intervene, and they want death to America. So those intercontinental missiles that they are producing are being produced to come to us. And what do you put on an intercontinental ballistic missile? You don't put a 500-pound traditional bomb on it or a 1,000-pound traditional bomb on it. You put nuclear warheads on it. And the fact that our government, Secretary of State, allowed them to buy high-end refined uranium just boggles my mind that she's not up on treason charges. I mean, she sold uranium to our enemy. Iran has been our enemy since the 80s. And, well, before the 80s. They've been our enemy since the fall of the Shah, and they took over our embassy as an act of war. They've been our enemy since they fired silkworm missiles that they knew would put us to war with them in 1988. And Reagan avoided a world war by working it out with them. But they have no problem firing on shipping. They have no problem taking out, they cut their nose off to spite their face, because you have, even now, we've killed off how many of their, after we take out the original Ayatollah Khomeini. We've taken out like 3 other leaders that they have brought up, and they still won't back down. They just we keep sending out thousands and killing thousands and thousands of the drones. We're taking out their missiles. We've decimated their Navy. We've taken out most of their Air Force, and they still won't submit. They still won't give up. They will not give up till the last man. During the Iran-Iraq war, they had 12, 13, 14-year-old boys out front of their royal guards on both sides as cannon fodder. They don't care. If you die a martyr, you get your 70 virgins. So if you die in the name of Islam, or you die in the name of Muhammad, you've got glory in heaven. And so they just don't stop. They don't use what every other person mind-wise would do. And you're going to have to completely eliminate that regime and let the people have a democratic election to bring back the leadership that they want before this is over.
Now, before we move on to our next question, I just want to submit this to my producer in the back. I see some comments. People say that they can only see me watching the video. Guys, let me know in the comment section if you're able to see my guest. If not, I know sometimes Facebook is really, really weird. So let me know, and we're looking into it. Okay, but I want to get to because I got you for a few more minutes, so I want to definitely get to the next question I have for you. So what I want to address is some of the questions I've seen from Americans that citizens that were asking, and someone with your experience would definitely have those answers to and can kind of give us some insight. So what is something civilians or people in the media often understand about military operations like this one?
I think they misunderstand the purpose of this. This was not to go in and start a major war with Iran. This was to go, the people of Iran were revolting. Iran has been our enemy for decades. They have been trying to take us down for decades. And the people of Iran rose up fighting this regime who were threatening a preemptive attack against us. They wouldn't come to the table over the nuclear options. And we, at this point, I feel like we had no choice to go in and eliminate the head of the snake and make this a military operation without going to a full-blown war. We have a lot of naval presence in the area, and Marine Corps on board ships and in our allies in the area, but we don't have boots on the ground. We're not bringing in tanks. We're not bringing in armored personnel carriers. We are doing what Bush did in the first Desert Storm War, which is what I was through, is like shock and awe. We are eliminating as much as we possibly can from the air with the Israelis to avoid an in-ground fight like we had in Korea, like we had in Vietnam, like we had in Afghanistan. They are letting experienced military leaders run this to eliminate the threat without us getting into a full-blown war. And people don't understand that. They think we're just, Trump's a warmonger and he's going to go in and he's going to start this major war. Trump's been trying to stop wars all over the planet since the day he got into office. This is not about going to war with Iran. This is about allowing the people of Iran to establish the democracy the people want and taking out an evil regime that wants to destroy the U.S. And if you don't, you're going to have another 9/11 on an exponential scale, because it won't be airplanes flying into the World Trade Center. It's going to be intercontinental missile with nuclear warheads landing in D.C., landing in L.A., landing in, all over our major centers, New York, Chicago. You're going to have a full out nuclear war because that's what Iran wants. They don't want a nuclear weapon to sit on like the US, the Soviets, the Israelis as a defensive weapon. They want it as a preemptive first strike weapon against the U.S. and against Israel and anybody who's on our side.
So let's get to our first sponsor and then we'll get right back in. So first sponsor is Your Skincare. This is a brand that I've been using since 2023. I love their products. They drop both skincare and makeup options. And I'll have a quick video that I want to share with you guys, and also a special code for anyone that wants to check them out. So take a look. This brand is also one of my favorites, and this brand is called Your Skincare. This brand has tons of different options that you could choose from. They also have an A to Z set and also individual products that you can use. I've actually been using this brand for a full year, and their stuff delivers, and I often get compliments on my skin. So I'm super excited to share this one with you guys today. There are two products that I'm going to share in this video out of their entire line. So the first one is going to be the Purifying Clay Mask, and this clay mask, ladies, is like no other clay mask I have ever tried. It is top notch. And the reason why is because it has bentonite clay, salicylic acid, and glycolic acid as the three main active ingredients. That bentonite clay is going to help to detoxify the face. You have salicylic acid that allows this clay mask to tackle acne in 15 minutes. You will see your acne breakout totally diminished, and by the next morning, completely gone, just by using the clay mask. Also, this clay mask helps to tighten, firm, lift, and also brighten. And you will notice your skin brighten within your first use of using it. Yes, you heard that right. Usual clay mask, it takes about 3 weeks for you to see that change, but this is the very first clay mask I have ever used that you see the change in your first use of using it. It is that powerful. Also minimizes and cleans out the pores as well, and just leaves you with this beautifully radiant skin. Now, if you have dry skin, it's recommended to use this clay mask once a week, and if you have oily skin like myself, you can use it up to twice a week. I'm telling you guys, when I use this clay mask, I really feel like my skin is set for the next few months before needing to go in with it again. The next product from them is going to be their lip balm. I love this lip balm because it has hyaluronic acid, shea butter, jojoba seed oil as your three main active ingredients, notwithstanding that there are inactive ingredients also that are also all oils. There's peppermint oil, fruit oil in here, raspberry seed oil, etc. Castor oil is also in here as well. So you have great ingredients in this lip balm, and this lip balm is made to tackle fine lines and wrinkles on the lips and also seal in moisture and plump the lips. I love it. And it's not a lip plumper, but it does make the lips look very nicely plumped and extremely hydrated. It is like a fan favorite from this brand. I have to say that all the products from Your Skincare are all formulated for sensitive skin. They're all clean, it's recyclable, it's all made here in the USA, and you can also use any of their products when you are pregnant. I love this brand so much that I had to partner with them. And so I go live on TikTok, and they allow me to do giveaways, and I'm live for at least 2 hours doing these giveaways with my followers, and also live stream exclusive discounts. And these are discounts you can't get if you're not shopping live with me. So ladies, if you do want to hop in and you want to grab some free stuff for yourself, I highly recommend you follow me on TikTok, because that is where it is popping when it comes to all of these brands. Also, check that out. And remember that true beauty comes with living in the peace of God, purpose, and a life full of love and serving others. Again, I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you subscribe, I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Okay, guys, I'm very sorry for my Facebook family that the video show is not showing. It's weird during the lives, but usually after the live stream's over, all of the stuff plays. So if you want to stay on Facebook, you can check it out right after this live stream is over. So I apologize for that. But you will also see this carousel that I have showing up here, and this is also in the description or my show notes. So this brand, Your Skincare, again, is a brand I've been using since 2023. I know a lot of you don't know, especially my Facebook fan, because you guys are kind of new. I'm new to this page. I've just been running now for 3 weeks. So I started in social media as a beauty creator. So that is my full-time thing that I do. And my political stuff is just on the side of that. I just felt the Lord called me into this to use my platform for this time. So that is why this Facebook page, the YouTube, the X, and the other TikTok account are created. So with that being said, I do have a partnership with this brand that I've been using since 2023. I love them. Their stuff is all clean, all made here in the USA. And there is a special link in the showcase. So if you click that link in the showcase, what's going to be provided to you is free shipping. You'll also have free refills, and you also get free birthday gift. So what this brand does is on their account, when you get onto their website, there's an AI skincare tool that you will access. And what that tool does is it'll ask you questions about your routine, your habits, your environment, because all those things affect the skin. So that way, when you get your routine or the products for what you need and the issues on your skin, it's more targeted and therefore a little more effective, because we're getting more closer to the issues and why the issue is taking place. So I love that about this brand, that they really prioritize that. Their customer service is top tier. They deliver just as fast as Amazon. So you could either check out my Amazon storefront, or you can go straight onto the website. Now, the difference between the two is that on my Amazon storefront, the only incentive I have for you is a 15% off code if you want to check them out. And that code is Iesha15 off. That's also in the show notes. If you you're going to see the link to directly to the site. That has my name at the end, and that's going to give you all the extra perks plus a discount off when you check out. Okay. So you can check them out. I love this brand. All right, let's get back into the next question I want to have for Terri today. So Terri, thank you so much for being with me again. So my last question I have for you, from a strategic standpoint, do you think confronting Iran and supporting Israel is necessary for U.S. national security? Why or why not? I know we kind of hit on that, but this is one of the main questions I see posing from the left and from those on the alt-right. They're constantly blaming Israel for every single thing that takes place. Now, I do understand that Israel's not innocent, and nor is America. However, when we're talking about the current operation in which we are in, that our men and women are fighting in, please give me your thoughts on this. So I'll ask the question again. From a strategic standpoint, do you think confronting Iran and supporting Israel is necessary for U.S. national security? Why or why not?
I think it was absolutely necessary that the U.S. and Israel did it together. And the reason I say that is that we are their primary targets. We are the ones Iran has been fighting against for half a century. We're talking from 1970, what was 1978, 1979, until 2026, a half century that they have attacked us. They've supported terrorism against us. They've started involving us in wars. They were sinking, it started out like with Operation Praying Mantis. It started out with Iran decided to take Sun Moon's art of war technique and eliminate the supply line, so they would sink all of Iraq's oil tankers, so they couldn't fund the war. Kuwait said, wait a minute, we're funding Iraq as well in this war, so we'll let them use our tankers because we got to get our money back. Well, Iran said, instead of saying, oh, well, that doesn't work really well, we'll just take out the Kuwaiti tankers as well. You don't do that, because at the time, Kuwait was not part of OPEC, so Kuwait was selling their oil on the cheap, and once they've eliminated Kuwait's ability to produce oil prices went up, gas prices went up, and the West said, wait a minute. And so the U.S. launched a big armada, the biggest since World War II, to escort tankers, just like we're doing now, to escort the tankers. Instead of backing down and saying, okay, let's find a plan B in their war against Iraq, they decided to mine international waters. And in the process, one of our nuclear frigates, brand spanking new, by the way, was escorting a tanker, hit a landmine, blew out like a 20-foot hole in the base of the ship, horrendous amount of damage. It was a miracle the ship wasn't sunk. And so the U.S. responded, sunk half their Navy, and they still, once the U.S. backed off and said, okay, we're gonna withdraw, they had to fire the Silkworm missiles. That was just one of many attempts to attack. They've attacked other U.S. military ships. They've funded Hezbollah against Israel. They've funded, Hamas against Israel. They helped fund Al Qaeda. They funded all of the, ISIS in Iraq. They fund terrorism all over the world, all the way to Nigeria and Somalia. they are an absolute, but their primary biggest targets are the US and Israel. And it was very important that we did this together. But I think another reason is that while the CIA, I'm sure, has good assets in Iran, I am very certain Mossad is a lot closer to it and buried so deep that we're getting information that we would not be able to get without the cooperation with Israel. And it's witnessed by, after the Ayatollah Khomeini was killed, the next person up, barely lived 2 hours before they were eliminated. And the only way you can get that much target the guy within hours of his election is if you have an inside asset. And Mossad is going to be a lot easier to get into there than a CIA asset is. So that is just my personal thinking on it. I don't have any secret, information on the buy and low, but I think it was crucial that we did it together because we are together their biggest enemy. We are their biggest target together.
Yeah. And Israel has been our consistent ally for years. So yeah, thank you so much for your insight.
Yeah. I remember being in Jerusalem, and actually the group I was with got a chance to talk with Netanyahu. He was not prime minister at the time. He was like, he's prime minister, and then he wasn't, and then he was, and it was like in between time. And Zola Levitt, we had the opportunity, and he was giving us a talk, and he said, the 6-day war had to be because the U.S. provided them the armaments for the 6-day war. And he made the joke. He said that, yeah, we had to do it in 6 days because the rent on weapons was due on the 7th day. But, we have been allies with them all along. And I think that as we look at the revival that we're trying to generate in this country, we have to understand as Christians, and we have to understand as Jews, and we have to understand as anyone who believes in Almighty God, that the Bible is forever. God's word is forever. And those who bless Israel will be blessed, and those who curse Israel will be cursed. And you have to be on Israel's side. You have to. You have to be on the side of God. And if you don't, you're going to pay for it. And I remember, I don't remember which country it was. You remember like 2 or 3 years ago that the guy was standing on the stage screaming, cursing Israel, bringing down actual curses on Israel, and died of a heart attack on stage.
Oh,
in the middle of his rant. He dropped dead of a heart attack. You don't curse Israel. And, in the end, all of these countries keep coming against Israel, but Israel's still here.
Yeah,
6
it's
million
wild.
Jews, 6 million Jews died in World War II, but Israel is still here. In 1948, we had Jews in Israel who had been there from the time of Christ, but they, on kibbutzes, but they just weren't in Jerusalem. But they had kibbutzes. We've had Jews in Israel since the time that Moses brought them in, to the edge of the promised land, and Joshua marched them in. There have been Jews in the Holy Land. It's
So
just
I guess
that
you're hitting on that. What I think a lot of, gosh, I can't remember the name of it. So this mainly comes from, I would say, more of a Catholic take when it comes to the Israel not being the Israel of the Bible. That type of take when it, of their lineage. I can't remember the name of it. I want to say it's not a reconstruction, but it's Oh, I can't remember the actual phrase.
Yeah, but
That
the thing is, if you really study the Bible and you understand that God has always said, when He sends them into exile, He brings them back home.
yeah.
He did that during the time of Daniel, and Nehemiah brought them back home, and He brought them back home after World War II. He will always bring them back home because they are His children, just as
Yeah,
we.
and I think it's been consistent. And the thing with the Word of God is we have to keep it within its context, and we also have to understand the Hebrew and Greek meaning of the word to rightly divide it. And so, for example, when you have like Romans 11 kind of just sums up everything, where it talks to us about the fact that we were grafted in, and that was for a purpose. It was to draw the Jews as well to Christ. So all of this is kind of like leading up to it. So it's like God hasn't abandoned them, and it is His desire for that nation. He chose them. Uh, yeah. So in I think I'll just digress
Christ,
there, because we can get deep into this
right, but
the biblical implications.
Christ came to save everyone. He came to save everyone. He came to save Pelosi and Schumer, whether they
Yeah.
believe it or not, or follow it or not, or accept it or not, and abandon the evil. It's God's desire that everyone be saved. And we have to remember that those that, truly believe in Him have to believe in, and that His word is true, have to believe
Mhm.
that it is forever true. All of it is true. We didn't just go from the Old Testament to the New Testament under a whole new law. We are under all of it.
Mm. Yeah. Well, I think we will in there so we can get to the next. I have the next sponsor as well, and then we'll bring in our next guest. But before we do that, Terri, I want to thank you so much for your insight in helping us understand what's taking place. And if you guys have questions about this, what's taking the operation in Iran, about the culture of Iran and things like that, I will have guests throughout this time to help us to decipher what's taking place and to know what's the truth. And if you got specific questions for Terri, you can let me know, and I'll be happy to get those over to her and have her respond as well. Terri, again, thank you so much for the time that you took to be here today and to help us understand the threat that Iran pose and the why we should be supportive of what's happening, the operation that's taking place in Iran right now, and to secure secure this nation and our allies as well. So thank you so much for that insight.
Thank you
Uh,
for having me.
So I want to get to our next sponsor. This is Jace Medical. I see my screen acting really wild right now, so I don't know if we're still good to go on the podcast. Uh, but our next sponsor is Jace Medical, and Jace Medical is. I think we can put up you can put up that flyer for them. But Jace Medical is an online platform where you can go to get prescribed medication. They actually have real doctors, real physicians that will prescribe these medications to you. And this was created out of places where we have like natural disasters, so that people that need critical medications like albuterol, insulin, etc., can have those on hand. So if you are somebody that likes to prepare for natural disasters, I'm sorry, you can have a set of medications on hand as well, and you don't have to wait on per se FEMA, etc., to be able to bring those to you. So if that is something that you would like to have, you can go to jacemedical.com. You can use my name, Iesha, all lowercase, when you're checking out. So what happens is when you get on this website, it will walk you through step by step how to choose a medication. You can get a kit. It usually comes in this beautiful blue bag where you'll have all your medication, and these are prescribed medications, so not the stuff you can get over the counter, that's easy, but things that you need a physician for. And the only thing you need to do is it'll ask you about allergies and things like that, so you can make sure that your kit comes prepared. And the last thing they do after you order, before they send out your medication, is they double check. The physicians will email you and double check that all the medications are correct, that they stayed away from the allergies that you might have, and then they go ahead and send out your kit. So if you would like to look into that, or you like to check them out, Make sure you use my code. That code is specifically for you. So that way, if you want to check them out, you want to have medications on hand that are essential for you, you can do that and you can have a discount with it. Okay, so check that out, jacemedical.com. I believe that's also in the show notes, and you can use my name, Iesha, and you can get a discount when you check out. Okay, so next I'm going to bring in another special guest. This is Michael Lauber. He is a podcast hoster of the Insurrection. He's also CEO of X America News, and he's going to come in. We're going to decipher some more things that are taking place within this war in Iran, including the oil prices and also within the Trump administration. So we're going to bring that to you and provide some more insight into what's taking place. His commentary, I think, is essential too, because he's always in the know when it comes to this. He has really good ties to people in government, and he can bring some insight that we have, or insight to questions that we have. Sorry. So if you got any questions, you can drop those in the show note, and I will try to view those. We are broadcasting to a ton of different channels right now, so I will definitely try to look into the comment section to make sure I get any questions that we do have along the way. Okay. So Mike, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me. I was always happy to be here.
Awesome. So glad to have you. Okay, so first off, I want to talk about the gas prices, because, this is something that's been in the media where they've said, oh, I think the Washington Post is saying that it's going to go up by $200, $300, something like that. What are your thoughts on the oil prices? How is that going to affect us? And where do we stand with that? Are we still balancing this, or is it being raised, or what are we looking at? Where are we headed?
It's still going to be like the truth of the matter is that, yeah, there is going to be some like short-term pain, but for long-term gain. Now, I did just read that apparently France and let me see what the other country was, are trying to cut a deal with Iran to not attack their ships as they go through the Straits of Hormuz. I don't know how much that's going to work, but essentially, like, we have mostly control of the straits at this point, but they are still firing, drones and trying to attack ships as they go through, because they're just lashing out. They're trying to basically hold the world hostage. Same thing they're always doing. Same reason they attacked 12 of their neighbors and bases of other European allies of the United States. It's because they can't get their way. They basically want to try to put enough pressure on the U.S. and Israel to stop striking so the Islamic government can stay in power. But yes, I mean, the truth of the matter is we are going to have short-term increases in gas prices. Here where I'm at in Ohio, it's a little over $3 a gallon. In California, the reason it's so high and why they're freaking out that it's $8.50 a gallon in LA is because California demands a special fuel blend. And earlier this year, 6 to 8 months ago, I don't remember exactly when, but one of the few refineries that was still doing this blend for California said, you know what, we're not doing this anymore. It's not profitable for us. It would be better for us to make gasoline that we can sell throughout the other 49 states instead of doing this special blend for California and their green nonsense. So yeah, California, that sucks. Sorry, guys. Elect some better leadership, and you won't be paying twice what the rest of the country is for gas, but it's nobody's fault but your own. And this problem will go away. Like, this is a result just of Iran trying to control the Straits of Hormuz. We can offer to escort ships and everything else, but it is a multifaceted problem, because these tankers are obviously carrying a huge amount of oil, which is very valuable financially. So a lot of the insurance companies are also not wanting to insure the ships as they go through the straits there, and that includes cargo containers as well. Now, Trump did offer to have the United States act as the insurer for these ships so they could travel through. But again, a lot of these companies, they're not going to want to do that. And again, I don't necessarily blame them, because there is a lot of, potential lawsuits from people getting injured or other things that could happen, not to mention losing the full freight and having to, recoup your losses that way. So it is a difficult situation, but it'll go away shortly.
Thanks. And so from what I understand, definitely how Trump has had that set up when it comes to us producing crude and things like that. So the majority of that is produced here in the U.S. and in Canada, correct? So we have a little bit of cushion where like you mentioned, we will have some effect, but it's not going to be as if we were in the 70s, where we were totally vulnerable to our enemies. Which I think was very wild, that we would put ourselves in a position to have Iran over this, like, it's just wild. that we would. And I love that Trump came in and made sure that these conditions were met before we and quickly before we had to go in and do something like this,
Yeah.
have an operation in Iran. I don't
Yeah.
know if you've go ahead. I'll let you comment on that.
Yeah, I was going to say just one other thing. Like, the other reason why we are seeing prices go up here, though our supply, it's not really affecting the gas supply in the United States because, again, we primarily produce our own fuel here, or we buy from Canada, or, I guess we do have some Venezuelan oil right now. But
Right.
the bottom line is, like, it isn't going to affect us at the pump. Like, it's not going to be like the 70s where, if your license plate starts with an A, you get gas on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And if it starts with whatever, you got a different day of the week. We're not going to be in that kind of situation. But prices are reflective of world markets. So U.S. oil suppliers, they're going to sell at whatever the current market rate is, which means you, the consumer at the end, are going to suffer because market rates around the world are up. Because, a lot of the world relies on the oil going through the Straits of Hormuz. I've heard 20% of countries. I don't know if that's exactly accurate, if that's 20% of oil sold or 20% of physical countries on Earth. I'd have to go back and check. But yeah, there are places where this has had an effect. And, we've also made some exceptions there to try to ease the burden for India, for example. We're allowing them to now buy from Russia and allowing Russia to sell back and forth to India. And ultimately, I think that's good anyway. I think we should get back on better terms with Russia at some point in the future, whenever this nonsense in Ukraine finally ends. They're much closer to a country we can deal with than China. But like it is going to be short-term pain. There is no getting around that. Like, that's the reality of the situation. And I'm sure, again, Trump and the administration knew that going in. I don't think releasing oil from the strategic reserves is a good idea, because remember, we all complained about this when Biden did it because gas prices got high. The same is true right now. Like, that's there for a reason. That's there for an absolute emergency, an invasion on the homeland, a situation where our fuel supply is cut off. I don't know, maybe terrorist attacks. We're seeing a lot of those pop up lately as the religion of peace continues to demonstrate who they really are here. Let's say they hit one of these fuel depots or transportation pipelines that go throughout the country to deliver gasoline, diesel, heating oil, everything. So I don't think we should be tapping the strategic reserve. It'd be better to have the prices be a little higher, even though people are going to complain. The media is going to go after it. But we do need to be hanging on that for a reason. We also do need to be consistent.
Well, I think you mentioned something that is key, is markets. And that's something that Donald Trump completely gets, right? We
Yes.
elected a businessman, somebody who has, done very well in this area for himself and understands markets and has already built relationships with these world leaders way before he came on scene as president. So I think, I love, again, that he went ahead and prepared the United States to have its own cushion. And I wonder, I believe that this is part of the MAGA movement of making America great again, for us to more so rely on ourselves for these critical things that we need, especially when you look at the fact that COVID exposed some things for the American people, where we had to rely on China, for example, to get critical medication. And then once we couldn't rely on those supply chains because they wanted to prioritize their own people, which is understandable, right? Then we had to look for another way to provide that for our own people. And we suffered for a time until we got companies that could produce those things for us. And so, I think that this is key. I love how he is prioritizing America in all of these areas. And one thing I think that Terri mentioned too is every question I asked her, there was a constant theme, and she would bring us back to history and tie that into what that means for nowadays. And I think that that's key, because that help us to understand why we are where we currently are. And
Yep.
because you got people asking, did they pose an imminent threat, for example? And you have to look at history to conclude that this is an imminent threat, right?
Yeah.
Or if you're ignorant and you just don't understand what's taking place in the Middle East.
Yeah, and I do go back and forth on whether or not I think they were really an imminent threat or not. I mean, they've been saying that they're weeks away from having a nuclear bomb for over 20 years. You can actually find people even saying it back in the 80s. So I don't know that that's really reliable intel.
Well, I think like you said, they want to create this fear, because that's kind of how they manipulated and controlled the Middle East, even with fear. And
Yeah.
so when you look at the fact that they, I believe it, not Stephen Miller, but when you walk into a negotiating room and the first thing you say is that we have 460 pounds or kilograms, which is 1,000 pounds of uranium enriched to 60%, that's how you start negotiating. I don't think
Yeah.
we should take you, for like you're playing,
Yeah.
especially since you are a hostile regime. So
Yeah.
we
Well,
got
I
to do
mean, I guess
something.
the bottom line is this. Yeah, it's certainly not a way to enter negotiations, especially with Trump. However, I have trouble believing that now was finally the time that they really were 2 weeks away from having a bomb. Maybe we'll get some evidence of that later. But
Okay.
the bottom line is they've been at war with the U.S. for 47 years. Ever since the Islamic regime took over, they've attacked us numerous times. They're responsible for the deaths of well over 1,000 U.S. servicemen. They've bombed bases, or been responsible for attacks in numerous nations, either directly from the Iranian government or um, indirectly through their proxies, Hezbollah, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Al-Qaeda, you name it. They're basically almost every Islamic terror group you've ever heard of is tied to Iran. There are very few that are independent, but there's probably one out there somewhere. But yeah, they definitely pose a threat to us and our servicemen. Now, the only reason I'm even hung up on the imminent thing is because, again, I don't really believe that they were suddenly this was the time that they really were about to have a bomb. Now, they may have wanted to make that threat, and the other danger they have is dirty bombs. And this is something else that's been discussed, though I do think for religious reasons, I don't think they would hit the holy sites in Israel because they want to be able to take them themselves. And the radiation would be considered a contamination. They would be desecrating those sites. They've said it themselves, too. But wiping out everybody else there, sure. Or firing a nuclear warhead into another Gulf state or a U.S. ally or at a U.S. base. That would be a possibility. And again, just the attacks in general. They've obviously been a threat to us. They've, this terrorism, hostage taking around the world. It's gone on for 47 years. At some point, it had to stop. Right now, they're weak, especially after the 12-day war. We were able to hit them hard, hit them fast, take out most of their leadership. And, I do think something that was said earlier today is we may be closer to an end to this than we thought. I guess they even pulled. Hang on, let me pull this up real quick. I was just looking at this a minute ago. But Scott Bessent was doing an interview earlier today, and they actually pulled him out of the interview so he could go to an emergency meeting with Trump. And when he came back, he seemed to hint that we're much closer to victory there than we might have thought. So, and honestly, that's kind of, I don't know how many more cardboard ayatollahs they have lying around or other people, but we know most of their leadership's gone. The people are hungry to retake their country and hungry for freedom. They're already starting to act in some areas and hunt down these IRGC and Basiji and other officials and beat them to death in the streets. So that's only going to intensify as they continue to lose their grasp there. I guess we just hit some rally I don't know if it was us or Israel hit some rally in support of the Ayatollah today too, to get rid of a lot of the other people that continue to support him. And personally, I think this guy probably is dead anyway. They said that to begin with. I have trouble believing that. We know that the original Ayatollah Khomeini was smoked along with other relatives of him, that we were told they were all in the same room. I have trouble believing that this guy survived and isn't in a vegetative state or something.
Now, have you seen anything surface that actually provides concrete evidence that he is alive?
Nope. Just their words.
Now, to make sure.
Now, the Trump administration, Hegseth did say today that he believes that Mataba, sorry, I can't think of his name now, is alive, but he is incapacitated, probably in a coma, and seems to have lost a limb. So they have somebody in the hospital or wherever this guy's being feeding them information. That would be a possibility. He may have survived. I just think it's unlikely. Or if he did, he's certainly not speaking. Even this statement they had, this written statement that came out, if you wanted to prove the guy was alive and, rally your base and inspire your little jihadis, wouldn't you at least record like an audio message from him, something like that, where people could hear it instead of just some written whatever and send it out? Maybe provide a picture. He can be sitting on their hospital bed giving the thumbs up, anything. So I think this guy's either brain dead or in a coma or dead.
Yeah. It's the same thing like we mentioned. They want to rule with fear, right? So even if they don't have the credible evidence to show you something, they can create the illusion or the perception that that thing that you fear is still active and alive. I wanted to switch gear here because I want to get to the Trump administration. I want to get your insights on some of the things we've seen happening within that. So, Kristi Noem, position. So some people are saying that she's been fired. Some people are saying that she's just been moved to an area where that's been pre-planned for her to be, but it came amidst this tension and all of this stuff that took place at the hearing. So what are your thoughts on her position?
What I've heard from a few people that are much closer to this than I do, or than I am, and I tend to agree with this, is that the moving her to the other position was probably pre-planned before the testimony in front of Congress. That because the left has made her a permanent target of their aggression after things that happened in Minnesota and a few other like mishaps that she's had along the way. Again, most of these are messaging and things like that.
Yeah.
But that the hearing is why it turned from moving her over and putting someone else in place just to kind of deflect the media and maybe shift gears with deportations a little bit. So when she accused Trump of authorizing the $220 million ad spend, and he's insistent that he isn't, like, that's why he's furious. He's when he talked to Senator Kennedy, he said, I never authorized this. This was never brought up to me. She basically said she's lying. And, because again, she's trying to pawn off responsibility. If you made the ad spend, you didn't have authorization for it, then own up to it at this point. I mean, it's a ton of money. But the big problem I think people have is she featured herself so prominently in these ads. And again, had she been in one or two, or in a recruiting ad or a messaging ad, like the I really like the one she had when they changed the app, the HBP or CBP One app to CBP Home. And she talked about, this is how you get your $1,000, you get your plane tickets, and you go back to wherever you came from. Like, having herself in that ad, is fine. But when she made herself the face of almost every ad they produced, that's unnecessary. You should have highlighted Border Patrol or ICE or other people, especially in the recruitment videos. Have somebody else narrate it. Don't, make yourself the face of everything and then get upset when people call you out on it.
Now, here's the thing that I thought, and before you said that, because I agree with everything you just said, but in the beginning we had Kristi Noem, we had Pam Bondi coming into these media appearances where they were basically telling the American people the work that they're doing on the ground. I thought
Yep.
this was great because President Trump can't be everywhere. He has to rely on that team, right? And
Yeah.
so I felt like they could give more accurate information about what's taking place. And
Yeah.
that would shift, we could go directly to the source of people who are actually on the ground doing the work, and we can know what's taking place. But then we saw that I learned there's a huge difference between somebody who can, do that job of securing our nation from within, like the raids that they had in Colorado, those different things, and somebody who can appear before the media and not get
Yeah.
tongue-tied or say something that jeopardizes their position or compromise President Trump. Like Caroline Levitt, she's amazing at her job.
Yes.
Like, that's her thing, to communicate what's taking place, on the president's behalf. But then these two, in their communication, have been caught saying things
Yes.
that the media has been able to run with.
Yeah.
Tell me your thoughts on the media appearances and that so-called self-promotion.
Yeah. Well, I think especially the press conferences, that's great. And just to in the discussion on the ads portion before I get over to Bondi, the press conference is great. Yeah, you definitely want to have people that can talk and explain themselves and push back against the media and shift the narrative. But it's the ads. That's the problem. Featuring yourself prominently in every single one of those, or not every single, but almost every single one of them. That's where the problem is. It's press conferences are one thing, but ads that you're running on cable, especially recruiting ads for ICE and other law enforcement, it's a little much. Now, Bondi, she's put her foot in her mouth numerous times in interviews. It's one of the biggest complaints about her is the inconsistencies, especially around the Epstein stuff, where she says one thing on one interview and then a few days later has to correct it or totally reverse it or whatever. And I mean, that's one of the big failings and one of the few big failings of the Trump administration is this. And it's pretty obvious it's continued to fester and grow now. That had she just been honest with things going forward, or if they've just had better communicating with what they were doing, we wouldn't be in half the problem. When you go out there and say, the files are on my desk, then they're not on my desk. They're still in New York.
Yeah.
I have 10,000 hours of videos. It's being reviewed. Wait, there are no videos. I don't know what to tell you about Bondi, because like she's good at giving a press conference. It's just the problem. The information isn't truthful.
Yeah. Yeah, I think and the media requires you to be quick-minded. Like, you gotta think on your feet. You have to answer, those questions quickly.
Yeah.
And then, and if you are somebody who's just, I think you just have to have the skill of doing that, because I feel like it's difficult. It's a lot of pressure. It's high. You just gotta be
Yeah.
quick. So I
Well,
think, when we talk about these media appearances, it's great for them to do these press conferences every once in a while or when it's needed, but to have to constantly be in front of the media like that, as things are unfolding and you haven't even reviewed the stuff,
yeah.
puts you in a position where you could jeopardize so much. So,
And that's the thing. I
yeah,
think like there's some sympathy if somebody misspeaks. She meant to say 12,000 and said 10,000. I think people would be willing to accept that, but it's the total reversals or things that she said that have turned out to be either total fabrications or something else nefarious is going on. That's where the problem is.
yeah. Okay, so we got one more sponsor I want to share, and then we're going to get to a place where we wrap up today. But the next sponsor we have is Augusta Precious Metals, and this is an organization that allows you to turn your 401k or your Roth IRA into precious metals like silver or gold. The one thing I love about Augusta Precious Metals is that they are a Christian company. They, even with their affiliates, they have a standard with them too. You must communicate truthfully, and with their customer service team, they don't get an incentive when you sign up, so they have no pressure in making you sign up. They are huge on educating you so you understand exactly what you're getting. There's no buyer remorse. They also have a 7-day money back guarantee. They have so many things in play that help you feel secure about about your investment, as well as allowing you to get all the information ahead of time as well. So if you want to check out Augusta Precious Metal, their information is in my show notes, but you can click on that and it'll give you more information on how you can speak to someone to make sure that that's the right move for you, and then move forward if you feel like you want to secure your Roth IRA or your 401k in that manner. As you know, gold and silver right now are hot topics right now because they're more secure, and they are something that's just securing our resources that we have in the United States. So if you want to check out that, go ahead and visit Augusta Precious Metal. Click on the show notes. You'll be able to check that out in more detail and then get some information for yourself. Okay, so we've hit on Kristi Noem, Pam Bondi, and I'm looking at my phone. Thank God for that, because somehow my laptop is getting into this. I can't even see my stuff here. For some reason, something's happening. So I'm looking at the other notes I have on this side.
Well,
So
they did say
the
there were
last
going to be a
note,
bunch of Iranian hacking starting yesterday or the day before, and I did see where they've
rebuke
had a
that in
few.
Jesus' name.
Yeah.
I rebuke that. But so I'm getting a lot of messages. Okay, so the last thing I want to hit on with you, Mike, is let's talk about because we hit on this when we were off camera, but I love what you had said about the things that we voted for. Are we getting what we voted for under Trump? Because as I stated in this podcast, we have the alt-right, right, to people that were on, saying great things about Trump, and then all of a sudden now, they're changing their tune for whatever reason, and and this is America. You have the freedom to do that. But I still think that Trump, he has an entire team, right, that has to answer to him and that he's relying on to help him with certain things, right? I
Yeah.
still think that overall he's doing an amazing job. So
Agreed.
my question to you, though, we talked about what we voted for as a whole, during the second term. So I would love for you to dive more into that and then share, do you think that we're getting what we voted for?
Well, I mean, I think most of the people, most of the detractors, including a lot of people you and I know, that, the thing they're upset with is the lack of arrests. And that's also the one thing we just don't have a lot of clarity on. I think other than that, most people, by and large, agree with the policy and what's come forward from the Trump administration. But the big problem is zero arrests. None. Zero. Nothing. No deep state officials. No nothing. They keep dangling things out in front of us. We've been hearing for 8 months now that John Brennan was going to be indicted, that there was a grand jury. Well, we know they're on at least their second grand jury now down in Florida, and he is now the subject of an investigation. At least that's what we heard in end of November, beginning of December. I can't quite remember which now. But we have also confirmed that there are at least 2 separate ones there. Lately, they've been teasing out that Barack Obama is being investigated by a grand jury, and there'll be an indictment soon. But yeah, a lot of people are frustrated because over a year in, there should have been at least some arrests, somebody. I mean, there's a lot of these people, like we have them on various crimes dead to rights, and they're happy to tell us about that as they release documents and reports and everything else. We're hearing that, and this is actually just breaking today. John Solomon's breaking it from justthenews.com. I'll just read the headline real quick. John Solomon says China infiltrated voter ID databases, evidence set to explode as Gabbard, Ratcliffe, and Patel conduct extraordinary review. And that's great that we have the evidence. And it's great that we've released a lot of the other evidence on Arctic frost and other illegal operations that went on. But I have trouble believing that, 14 months in almost at this point, there's nobody to arrest. And even the cases with Letitia James and Comey they had 4 months to refile these cases, refile the charges. They let the clock run out. I think that's where people are really disappointed. And the Epstein thing, especially now that these emails are out, we know that there were crimes committed there. And we don't even have to get into the child sacrifice, eating people, stuff like that. I mean, there's definitely something weird going on with what they're talking about, jerky and everything else. There's something there. But even if you just want to look at the financial crimes, and I think I brought this up on here before, but there's a number of these, YouTube attorneys out there that have been going through some of these, and some of them have been former prosecutors. There's a gentleman, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on his name again right now, but he said, this email alone, if he was still a prosecutor in wherever, Philadelphia or New York or wherever he used to work, that this email alone would be enough to get an indictment. This is person A, but because we have these illegal redactions, we don't know who that is, emailing him insider information about a company like, hey, we're about to take this huge financial hit, go short our stock, basically, and you'll make millions. That's illegal. And we could pursue each one of these people. And then again, once you bring them in, they can give you information on others, and we could take down this whole network. That's where people have the problem, that instead we've got Todd Blanche out there, this horrible press conference about a month ago saying, we've looked through the files, we can't find any crimes, but if you see anything, let us know. Ha, ha, ha. And the FBI, sticking to the narrative that Epstein trafficked children to no one. And that doesn't really add up when you have the French media now. This Jean-Luc Brunel, another French movie star, celebrity, I think movie guy, that was, close ties to Epstein. They have emails now of him talking about moving women over to the United States from European countries, smuggling them in. It's like there's obviously a trafficking network that was going on. The financial crimes are obvious, not to mention all the other suspicious things in the emails. But it's going after the deep state. I mean, the main issues we voted on Trump, the people voted for Trump for, were securing the borders, to get our country back on track economically, and justice, to actually pursue and arrest a lot of these deep staters. Now, I know that they are making some progress with the elections. They grabbed all the data from Georgia several weeks ago now. We found out they quietly grabbed everything in Arizona, either over the weekend or towards the end of last week. The previous weekend, or towards the end of last week. We don't know exactly when yet, at least not that I've seen, but they are working there. But it'd be nice, a lot of the people that are upset with the way things are going right now, you could put them at ease, get them excited again immediately if we could just, get an update on where these things are, but even more importantly, get some of these figures arrested that we seem to have dead to rights on a variety of crimes, and then go from there. I mean, that alone, I think, would solve this problem with the lack of enthusiasm going into the midterms.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing that insight.
Anytime.
All right, guys. So next week I will have Inez Cyrus on. She has been on my podcast again before, and she is the expert on Iran. So she's going to break down some more for us when it comes to Iran and what's taking place. So we're going to have some key people that bring that insight in. And that will be on Saturday, 2 to 3 p.m. ET. I know I've been changing my regular program because of the events I have happening and the travel that I have. So it's been either Thursday or Friday that we've been going live instead of my normal time, which is Saturday, 2 to 3 p.m. ET. So next week, it will be Saturday, 2 to 3 p.m. ET. And I'll try to keep you guys informed and ahead of the curve as best as I can when that time changes. But Mike, thank you so much for being with me today, for sharing the insight, all of the stuff that you're discovering and that you're able to decipher to and make, come to a truthful conclusion on. I appreciate that insight to our audience today. And
well, thank you for having me.
Yeah. And guys, thank y'all so much for being with me. I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Bye for now.